You know, over the last few weeks, the topic of Atari 2600 Homebrew has come up time and time again over several of my recent videos. I mean, we looked at that Sonar, the lost prototype that was fixed by a homebrew developer. We were expanding our Flashback Gold to include way more games, including tons of homebrew stuff. And while I've always been aware of and respectful of the homebrew community, especially the work done by Champ Games and distributed by Atari Age, but it's always kind of been something that's like on the periphery of my view. Like, I know it's out there and I know they're doing cool things, but I haven't ever focused on it specifically. That is at least until I saw this thing come along. Zookeeper is a 1983 arcade game that I love. It's one of those sleeper hits that I always play if it's out there because it's rarely out there if you see it. When I saw the job they did with the port to the Atari 2600 for this game, it's so good. I didn't just want the game, I wanted the box, I wanted the whole deal. And I want to show you how impressive this is, what could be done on the 2600 today, right after this. This video supported in part by...
Playing VR, I tend to sweat. It gives me an edge. So King of Nerds happens to give me an edge too. Let King of Nerds give you the edge. Bye, King of Nerds.
Hey there, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I'm John, and I am a GenXGrownUp. Thank you so much for the click. If you're not already familiar with Zookeeper, as I mentioned, it's one of those sleeper favorites of mine. Yes, I love the Donkey Kongs and the Pac-Mans and the Dig Dugs and stuff like that, of course. They're everywhere and they're easy to find. But I can't even remember the first time I saw a Zookeeper arcade cabinet, but it was released in 1983 by Taito, right around the same time of all of the other games that I already knew and loved. But this was something cool and different. When you play Zookeeper, you take on the role of Zookeeper Zeke, trying to save your girlfriend Zelda, who's been abducted by mischievous Marcel the monkey. What is it with monkeys abducting girls anyway? I mean, that's played out. The game is played top-down, looking at the zoo enclosure for the animals, and you as Zookeeper Zeke have to run around the perimeter of the wall, adding wall pieces while all the animals are inside trying to escape. Each level has a timer, and at certain intervals in the timer, bonus items are dropped there on the screen, and ultimately one of the bonus items is also a net that will let you catch escaped animals and put them back into the pen. The overall object is to end each level with as many animals inside the walls as possible, so you score them. But while you're playing, you can also have these huge leaps where you jump over 2 or 3 or a dozen animals. If you jump enough animals, you can actually score 1,000,000 points just for jumping the animals. Anyway, as much as I love this game, when I first saw that Champ Games was doing a port, well, I'm like, yeah, sure, I know the Atari can't handle this. But yes, it can. Oh my goodness, as soon as I saw the port, I couldn't believe what homebrew developers in the 21st century are able to do. Now, while they do all this work within the constraints of that original hardware, so this plays on a stock Atari 2600, they do have the luxury of cheaper memory, so the cartridge itself can be much larger, but still, wait till you see. Wait till you see. Now, while the game is astounding, and it stands on its own, we're going to get to that in just a second, it doesn't have to stand on its own, even though it can, so I got the boxed version, and there's something really magical, interesting, fascinating about getting a new boxed Atari 2600 game in the 21st century. You can see it here next to a Yar's Revenge. It's just about the same size, maybe a little bit shorter, and it's not just a box, and it's not just that there's a cartridge. So first of all, gorgeous artwork from the original Zookeeper arcade game, just slightly reinterpreted here. And then over on the back, you have exactly what you'd expect to see on a boxed, video game that you would have seen. The irony is that this box will likely never see a store shelf. All of this art is fan service for someone that loves seeing great box art, because these are mail order, right? And it's not just the box, there's cool contents. Let's get inside. You've got this full color manual, which, I mean, arguably maybe laid out better than manuals you would have seen from Atari or Activision back in the day. I mean, this is just, I'm running out of words to talk about just how impeccably Atari Age and Champ Games puts this stuff together. Plus they gave me this big poster. So a poster that I can hang on the wall of that great cover artwork. And okay, so you got a box, you got instructions, you got a poster, and you have the physical cartridge. Look, full color label on the top and, on the front. They just do everything to replicate the experience that you would have had buying a new game had you bought it in, 80, 81, something like that. You buy a new game, and it's the same form factor and heft and everything of kind of an old school Atari cartridge. And, oh man, okay, all right. Contents are great. Got the poster, we got all that cool stuff. Let's plug this thing into an Atari, and I'm going to show you just how cool the gameplay is. Okay, now brace yourself. This is about as accurate a port as I have ever seen of a classic arcade game. There are some minor differences, but all of the spirit of the game, the part that you actually want to have replicated in a port, is so incredibly well done. Here I have the two games side by side. On the left is the original arcade game. On the right is the Champ Games Atari 2600 port. They replicated the title screen. When you go into each level, like all the pieces are there. The physics of Zeke jumping around the screen. And it's not just the look of the game, but the feel of the game has been captured. The physics of how your zookeeper leaps over all the animals. You know, they were able to match somehow the feeling of that on the Atari 2600. You likely remember when you first got Donkey Kong for your 2600, and it was so horrible and crappy, which is arguably might have been done intentionally by Coleco. That's a whole other story. But you only got like two of the boards, and only kind of. Like this zookeeper captures all of the elements of the game. Yes, you have the main screens where you are capturing the animals, and you need to keep them inside of their pen at the end. But after every 2 levels, you have this bonus level. You have to jump your way up to the top. Zelda is up there at the top. You need to get to her and save her. That's been captured somehow in all of its gameplay glory in this little cartridge. Plus, on every like 5th or 8th level or whatever, after every 5 levels, I think, you get this extra man level where you have to, all these animals coming out of cages with these escalators, you have to leap your way to the top to gain an extra man. Even that part was there. There's so many little details that usually are relegated only to arcade games that don't make their way over to Atari 2600 ports. Things like when you score, the amount of the score popping up right on screen. That's no more screen real estate, that's more sprites, that's more drawing. It's often not done, but all those little things are here. Now this is definitely not a perfect port of Zookeeper, but consider the limitations. Like if you haven't read Ian Bogost's book, Racing the Beam, to just understand the limitations and the original intent of the hardware of the 2600, you should. It's an amazing read. I'll throw a link down in the description of this video, including, of course, a link to Champ Games and their awesome game, which, by the way, this wasn't given to me for free. I'm not just gushing over this because somebody gave me something. I paid for this, and I just think it's amazing. This is the first game I purchased from Champ Games. It definitely won't be the last. Just here's a little bit more, just to show you what I'm talking about. Look at the frenetic pace of this game. And then remind yourself, this is on a poor little Atari 2600. Remember all the Pac-Man ghosts that had to flicker because you couldn't put too many things on the screen at the same time? There's a dozen things or more running around on the screen at the same time, and somehow, not at all flickery, not at all problematic. Look at all the colors on screen. Look at all the individual sprites and shapes and the different shaped animals and the different, just so much. And what about the wall? I can imagine this is a complicated part of this game because you're laying down bricks as the animals are tearing them apart. These levels are basically kind of fully buildable and destructible and can change dynamically as the animals work their way out. And all of that is here in this Zookeeper. Now, interestingly enough, Atari actually had the rights to do a port of Zookeeper back in 1984, but it was never finished and it was never released. And I can't imagine, with the strategies and tech they had back then, it would have been nearly as cool as this Zookeeper. I can't believe I've spent so much time not paying attention to the homebrew community and the amazing work that's being done. I'm changing that today, here and now. Just so impressive to see what dedicated enthusiasts can do on a limiting platform and expand it just by the use of new strategies and new technologies, and still plays on your original Atari 2600. Man, I'll throw some links over my shoulders here and here to some other Atari content we've covered recently relating to the homebrew market. I certainly hope you found something to enjoy in this video. Can't wait to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.